Welcome back. We're in South Africa now, where the political situation appears to be pretty interesting. The presidency of Cyril Ramaphosa hangs in the balance. Well, leaders of the nation's governing party have been meeting earlier today to discuss the president's future amid a corruption scandal that has led to calls for him to resign. He came into power pledging to tackle corruption, but has been caught up in his own crisis. An independent report said President Ramaphosa may have broken the law by allegedly covering up a theft at his farm. However, he denied any wrongdoing. His spokesperson said the report was flawed.
Just attended a meeting of the National Working Committee, and I have been recused from the meeting because they are going to discuss the panel's report, and as per our own experience and history and tradition, it's always best when a matter that affects a person personally should be discussed in their absence. So that's precisely what has led to my recusal, to enable members of the National Working Committee to have a thoroughgoing discussion on the report without my presence, without me being there, so that they are free to express themselves as openly and as thoroughly as possible, without any form of fear or favor.
Well, that was President Ramaphosa on Sunday when he said he would be attending the NEC meeting today. But today, the president filed court papers at the Constitutional Court for review of the scathing report of his Phala-Phala farm. It comes after the ANC's NEC meeting today. Our South Africa Bureau Chief, Betty Debia, was at the meeting and now reports.
Outside the venue of the ANC's National Executive Committee meeting in Nasrec, views were visibly divided among party members, with the police closely watching.
Cyril Ramaphosa, if he had any integrity, would have stepped down to avoid the African National Congress and the government of South Africa to face the kind of embarrassment that he's causing for all of us.
We are saying, give President Ramaphosa a chance to rebuild this country, our precious country.
Embattled President Cyril Ramaphosa soon arrived shortly before former President Thabo Mbeki for the meeting.
This way, the President.
Once again, President Cyril Ramaphosa recused himself after making his presentation at the meeting.
So the President again asked to be recused. The NEC has accepted that recusal. He has been recused. You saw him. He came out again and waved at members of the media as he left. If there are developments that warrant us talking to yourselves on the conclusion of this National Executive Committee, we'll do so.
At some point, the media was called in and the House felt quite tense. The meeting was far from over at this point. The question was, will the ANC rise above differences and close ranks? As expected, the opposition parties, or a coalition of opposition parties, would have none of it. And here is a plan of action, according to the EFF leader, Julius Malema.
Cyril Ramaphosa has violated his oath of office and the Constitution of South Africa, and he must be removed as a matter of urgency. The EFF, along with the opposition parties, has resolved that in addition to the Section 89 impeachment process, will request the Democratic Alliance, the official leader of the opposition, to table a motion of no confidence against Mr. Ramaphosa on the basis of the prima facie evidence that he committed serious violations of the Constitution and the laws of the Republic. If the Democratic Alliance, which is the second largest political party in Parliament, is unable to table a motion of no confidence, the Economic Freedom Fighters, which is the third largest political party in Parliament, will table the motion of no confidence against Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa before the sitting of the National Assembly on the 6th of December 2022. The EFF will explore legal avenues to compel the Office of Acting Public Protector, the South African Reserve Bank, the National Prosecuting Authority to release their respective reports and findings regarding the crimes committed at and in relation to Phala-Phala Farm.
And Betty is still at the NEC meeting in South Africa, monitoring the progress of the conversations and the deliberations regarding President Ramaphosa's political future. She sent this in just as we were playing that report. The Treasurer General of the ANC, Paul Mashisile. Let's take a listen.
The ANC-NEC met in a special session on Monday, the 5th of December 2022, meaning today, to deliberate on Section 89 parliamentary report. The President of the ANC, Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa, attended the special NEC meeting and made remarks, after which he was allowed to recuse himself. Members of the NEC, having received the report of the special NWC held on Sunday, the 4th of December, then engaged extensively on the report. They discussed the report fully and frankly, and they came to this conclusion. The NEC resolved that the NEC will vote against the adoption of the report of the Section 89 panel, given the fact that the report has now been taken on review by the President. So we thought we are going to leave it there for now. Should Parliament proceed tomorrow, the ANC will not support that report. That's our conclusion.
And that's the updates we have. The African National Executive Committee of the African National Congress, the ruling party in South Africa, of which President Cyril Ramaphosa is the president, the leader of the party, has decided not to adopt the reports by the Parliament, the Section 89 panel reports from Parliament, and they have decided that if Parliament goes on with a vote tomorrow against the president, they will not be supporting it. That leaves the country in a pretty interesting situation. President Ramaphosa himself says he will be fighting the court papers, to fight the constitutional, to fight the review of the report on his farm as investigations continue regarding what happened and what was stolen from his Phala Phala farm in South Africa. We'll bring you details of this as we get them and the developments on this story. In other news now, but staying with peacekeeping operations in Africa, where the West African leaders did meet over the weekend, saying they would establish a regional peacekeeping force to intervene in member states to help restore security and constitutional order in the region, which has witnessed coups in the past 2 years. Western Central Africa have made strides in the past decade, a shared reputation as a coup belt. But the ECOWAS wants to do more to boost constitutional government in its member states.
The leaders are determined to establish a regional force that will intervene in the event of need, whether this is against terrorism or to restore constitutional order in member countries. The leaders have also looked at the transition in the 3 countries in transition, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Guinea. The leaders have decided to ensure that the transition stays on course in all 3 countries. There is no exception to the return to democracy as agreed in the transition time frame, in the transition agreement with ECOWAS.
We're in Britain now, where opposition leader Keir Starmer has announced plans to spread power away from the political centre of Westminster, aiming to offer people more control over their lives and local politicians a greater say on transport, housing and jobs. Mr Starmer, whose centre-left Labour Party is leading the governing Conservative Party in opinion polls, is moving to outline his agenda to show voters how he might govern before an election widely expected to be held in 2024. In response to the government's efforts to level up the country by tackling regional inequalities, Starmer says this can only be achieved by delivering the biggest ever transfer of power from Westminster to the British people.
Higher, wider, better. That is how Britain must set its sights. And I'm determined that with Labour, that's exactly what we will do. That's why I asked Gordon and the Commission to carry out a report on the future of the UK. I asked them to put together a proposal for the biggest ever transfer of power from Westminster to the British people, so that if Labour wins the next election, Britain will see a change not just in who governs, but how we are governed. The tools to a fairer society and a stronger economy placed directly in the hands of working people. So together we can build an economy not just for the many, but by the many and of the many. Now, during the Brexit referendum, I argued for Remain. Labour will rebuild trust by reforming the centre of government, cleaning up sleaze, nourishing the relationship between central government and the devolved authorities, and replacing the unelected House of Lords with a new, smaller, democratically elected second chamber. Not only less expensive, but also representing the regions and nations of the United Kingdom.
To politics in the United States now. Georgia is getting ready for its election runoff set to fall tomorrow, December 6th. Democratic Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock is warning his supporters not to get complacent, despite high early voter turnout 2 days ahead of the state's vote. Of course, this was on a weekend. Senator Warnock is facing off against Republican challenger, former football star Herschel Walker. Election officials have reported heavy turnout ahead of the runoff that will determine whether Democrats can add to their razor-thin majority in the U.S. Senate.
So we got 2 more days, Athens. We've had incredible turnout during the early vote period, but do not rest on the strength of that. Don't spike the football before you get into the end zone. Don't dance until we brought this thing on home. He did a lot for the University of Georgia in the 1980s. But we're on a different field tonight. And the people of Georgia need a true champion. Women need a champion. Workers need a champion. Our kids need a champion. The planet needs a champion. We're on a different field tonight. And like the University of Georgia, I'm undefeated.
That, of course, was in church on Sunday. Well, for Georgia's Republican Senate candidate Herschel Walker, he's also made a final campaign push with a speech in Loganville ahead of the state's highly anticipated runoff. It'll be the second time in 2 years that the Senate race has gone into runoff in Georgia, a battleground state because neither candidate secured majority of the vote. Let's bring in our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird. who has a bird's eye view on everything happening in the United States. Maria, sorry for the play on your play of words on your name, but it just seemed appropriate at the moment. Let's begin, of course, with the preparations for tomorrow. Apart from the campaigns, the last-minute campaigns in church on Sunday, what else are they saying? What else have they been saying and doing in preparation for the runoff?
Well, you're exactly correct, and a bird's eye view is perfectly fine. I think that that's exactly what we are doing as we're watching this very contested race. We know that tomorrow is going to be a major day, not only for Georgia, but the entire country. And as you look at, and as you said earlier, this has been a historic early voting session. We have seen over 1.8 million voters out in early voting, which is a historic number that we have not seen before. We know that this would potentially give the Democrats a 51st seat in Senate if Ralph Warnock was to win. We also know that this is a Republican that comes into the race, and you talk about a runoff for someone who does not have a strong political background. And so I think this would be a testament to identify not only where Georgia is headed, but what the country really cares about and where the country is headed.
About that, how much of a heavyweight Warnock himself is, because you have the former president, Donald Trump, supporting Herschel Walker, and then I think just a few times we've seen, any of those Democratic heavyweights behind Warnock. I know the former President Barack Obama was at one of his campaigns, but really, how would that reflect at the polls for him?
As you said, former President Barack Obama has been a major supporter. He has been campaigning for him, not only with this runoff, but even prior to the runoffs in the regular general election. And so we are in a period of time where I think that is going to be a huge part of what's going to help him over the edge. You can see, as you stated earlier, he's crisscrossing the state on Sunday, providing a sermon as he's a senior pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church in Georgia, which is the church of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so some of that historic symbolism, I think, is all a part of his campaign strategy. As you said, those heavyweights really there supporting and pushing him forward. But you can also even see with Herschel Walker and some of the work, even though his has been over on Sunday, a little bit quieter, more private events, not as much of a public event of campaigning. We have seen many individuals, as we saw Lindsey Graham has come out in support of him. We have not necessarily seen the former President Donald Trump explicitly support him, but we also know that this will be a referendum on whether or not the former president does have a viable bid for 2024.
And speaking of Herschel Walker, Maria, well, he's faced a scandal, controversies against him recently with regards to abortion. And then a former girlfriend recently came out, I think over the weekend, granted an interview to NBC, talking about, the 5 years that she spent with him in a relationship and how abusive he was. Are people, making the comparisons? Are they really looking at the kind of person he is, as they prepare for the elections? His fan base, how is that either growing or shrinking in light of the controversies?
I think, as you said, there has been controversy since the beginning of him stating that he was going to run for office. But this most recent event, I think, is one that those who are your traditionalists in the Republican Party, those who believe in what they consider the strong values of character, respect, and all of those very core fundamental Republican core values, I think they will likely not show up to the polls. Will they not vote for him and vote for Reverend Warnock instead? I don't think that we're in that place in the country, but I think that we could potentially see some Republicans sitting out as a result of some of what we've seen from the character allegations against him and some of the, as you just mentioned, what came out over the weekend. So we are going to definitely see it have somewhat of an impact, but unfortunately, I think that we are in such a contentious situation between Democrats and Republicans, and the two parties are so different at this time. And we really are in a state of reviving the democracy in America, that we will probably see many Republicans almost focusing just on the fact that he's a Republican and they want a Republican in office, and not looking at some of these other areas that we have discussed about, obviously abuse of women, abortion issues. I mean, there's just a myriad of things that have come out over the last few weeks and months.
Tomorrow's a big day in Georgia. We know you'll be monitoring from your part of the world, from the top of your own tree, Maria. So we'll be looking to you to give us the updates. Thanks again.
Thank you.
We move on to other stories now. Residents of a central North Carolina county are facing nights of freezing weather without power after vandals opened fire on 2 electric substations in what authorities called a targeted attack. Authorities say a motive for the weekend damage spree isn't clear, and due to outages, schools will be closed today and potentially even longer. Moore County Sheriff Ronnie Fields asked that a curfew will be put in place from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. About 64% of Moore County's electric customers remain without power all through the night on Sunday, and in the area, much of the area at least, particularly close to east of Charlotte. We have more stories after the break coming up. Plus, lava flowing from Hawaii's Mount Mauna Loa said to be moving closer to the island's main highway. Stay with us. Welcome back to the program. Swoove, a Ghanaian startup company born at the dawn of the COVID-19 pandemic, was tempered by economic struggle. A co-founder, Kweku Tabiri, hopes the tech company's low delivery fees will help bring back those customers.
As a pair of motorcyclists from Ghana startup Swoove zipped along Accra's back streets with deliverers, a team of software engineers tracked their progress on screens. Swoove's founders say starting out during tough times makes the firm well-placed to weather the economic fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic and effects of conflict in Ukraine.
Businesses that can survive within this particular time frame will do even better when times get better. And I'm expecting times to get better maybe within 2 or 3 years, right? So at that time, we would have been through the hard times to then benefit of the good times. So I think it has its advantages and disadvantages. They're being shaped by the flames of economic struggles.
Swoove was one of 5 finalists from South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, Senegal, and Ghana, selected from a pool of more than 500 applicants in the annual MEST Africa Challenge, which offers a grand prize of $50,000 in funding. It was the first in-person competition at the Silicon Valley-style Accra campus of the Africa-wide Technology Entrepreneur Training Program and Seed Fund since the coronavirus pandemic forced it online in 2020. MEST's portfolio director, Melissa Insia, says this year's finalists developed their business in a downturn that has disproportionately affected emerging markets, making their journey to success much harder.
The analogy I would use is, walking into a gold store and buying a nice bracelet versus having to actually mine for the gold, refine the gold, design the gold, right, before you actually then present it to the customer. And that's typically the situation here on the ground.
A Senegalese e-commerce platform, Kweli, won the competition, which focuses on African-made products. All 5 finalists will receive coaching from MEST throughout the life of the companies. Although Swoove did not win, Tabiri takes comfort in the outlook for African innovation.
We're going to see a few key ideas that are going to blossom and build up into probably big unicorns. The continent still doesn't have a lot of this problem solved, so we're going to see a lot of startups that are coming up that are actually going to solve these problems, and now they have the money to be able to do it.
Swoove, which makes more than 5,000 deliveries per week, says it's hoping to work long-term with the participating startups, which came from all over the continent.
Well, residents in China's capital, Beijing, have expressed mixed opinions towards the easing of the world's toughest COVID-19 curves as a patchwork of easing measures sowed confusion across the country, hoping for more clarity on specific policies. Now, for some, policy changes feel random as China's authorities have been shifting tone on the dangers posed by the coronavirus in the wake of last month's unprecedented protests. Although the protests largely pettered out amid a heavy police presence across major cities, in their wake, numerous regional authorities have announced some relaxations of lockdowns, quarantine rules and testing requirements. Well, to what the weather has been doing across the world, we're in Indonesia, of course, where people have been evacuated overnight because of the spewing of ash by one of the country's oldest volcanoes, on Mount Semeru. It's been erupting since Sunday afternoon. Residents in the East Java were on high alert after a violent eruption at the island's tallest volcano, prompting authorities to impose an 8-kilometer-mile no-go zone and forcing evacuations of entire villages. An affected villager urged the government to provide assistance in relocating as soon as possible. The chief of an observation post monitoring Mount Semeru, Umar Seba, says that volcanic activity remained high even today after the 3,676-meter volcano erupted at 2:46 p.m. on Sunday. Eruption, some 640 kilometers east of the capital, Jakarta, follows a series of earthquakes in the west of Java, including one last month that killed more than 300 people. No casualties have been reported yet, but there's not been any immediate disruption to air travel. And the lava flowing from Hawaii's Mauna Loa, which is the world's largest active volcano and which erupted since last week, is edging closer to the Big Island's main highway. A video from the U.S. Geological Survey Hawaiian Volcano Observatory showed lava spewing from the volcano during an eruption on Sunday night. The agency reported that the main front of the lava flow was 3.2 miles away from the Daniel Inouye Highway, also known as Saddle Road, and could possibly reach it in a week. But the USGS also says that because of the unpredictable nature of lava flows, it's difficult to estimate when or if the flow will impact the highway, which is the island's main east-west road. Mauna Loa rises 13,679 feet above the Pacific Ocean and is part of a chain of volcanoes that form the islands of Hawaii. The last time it erupted was in 1984. African soccer fans remain proud after England sent Senegal home from the World Cup on Sunday. Supporters, however, said there's also hope for the future. England took a long time to impose themselves on Senegal and survived a couple of scares, but in the end, they surged to a comfortable 3-0 victory, setting up a quarter-final clash against France. Morocco, who faced Spain, is now the only African team left in the tournament. And as we end the program, it's an amazing sight and a soothing view in Belgium as the country's Plankendale Zoo crawls with oversized glowing insects as a winter light show. Giant bugs and those that eat them opened up to the public. Following a successful first edition themed around dinosaurs, the zoo partnered up with artists from China to light the present iridescent butterflies, there they are, a buzzing beehive and massive tarantula. Setting up the light show required more than 23,000 man-hours, according to the zoo's management, and the 56 compositions contain 22,500 LED bulbs. To brave the cold, visitors can also enjoy a hot chocolate with traditional smoke bowl and pastries round the campfire. Exhibition runs until January 15, 2023. Pretty interesting, right? And pretty cool. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.